Welcome, everyone. Welcome, welcome. A great time to put phones on airplane mode because we're going to talk about some of the most complex things in the universe for an hour after lunch. Whose idea was that? But we're going to do it. Just a quick introduction and housekeeping. I'm Dr. David Rock. My accent's Australian, so you don't have to try and work it out. Based in North America for 15 years. I'm super passionate about taking complex science and making it accessible to the mainstream, especially things that deserve to be shared. I've been doing that for a long time around educating the million people who run the world in how to be more mindful, self-aware, and socially conscious through the lens of real science, neuroscience. I've helped millions of people understand humans better in places of power. But I ran into Nassim last year, and not physically, we run into each other? No, we saw you somewhere in the world.
Most likely.
And I was blown away by the importance of his science and his intellect and his work. And I was horrified that he didn't have like a book to announce that he's literally solved something Einstein couldn't solve, and you have to have a book. And he's like, no, I'm too busy. I'm like, talk to the CEO. No, we're too busy. I'm like, I'm coming to help you. And I turned up in Geneva unannounced, and we're putting out a book called Unified, and then like, oh, you need capital, so let's get you to Davos, and here we are. So I'm kind of supporting a really important mission. You can decide for yourself how important it is. I think it's one of the most important things I've heard in decades. So that's me. I'm just going to be facilitating, asking questions. I'll manage the questions. There'll be time for questions at the end. Please hold them. We've got a wonderful set of questions that if I was an investor, I would want to ask him. So we're going to be kind of walking through logically. There'll be the investment opportunity itself will be discussed towards the end, and there'll be about 10 minutes for questions at the end as well. Just want you to know there'll be a further deep dive into the science. We'll have some time on the science, but there'll be a real deep dive in the science for approved potential investors for a 2-hour session coming up in a month or so. So if you're like, oh, I want more science, we'll do that for the group of people that are kind of the right group there. Sarah's going to speak. Sarah's the CEO. Do you want to introduce yourself, Sarah?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming. Just a brief introduction so we can dive right in with Nassim. My name is Sarah Omni. I'm the CEO of the International Space Federation. I've been leading the companies for about 3 years. I was involved with them in California. We moved them over to Europe 2 years ago. Our headquarters are now in Geneva with our laboratory a little across the border in France. There we have about 20 staff, and that includes our engineers and scientists working from the laboratory in theoretical research and research and development into the advanced energy technologies. So thank you for joining us here today.
Amazing. Thanks, Sarah. And Sarah and I will take questions about the investment opportunity at the end. How many of you invest in something to do with energy and climate and saving the world? How many of you are interested in that? Okay, very good. You're in the right place. So let's start at the beginning. What got you interested in solving physics? I mean, the way I explain you kind of solved a 100-year challenge in physics. Where did that start?
Well, you're all making me nervous. I was very inquisitive child, and my father was a child psychologist, fairly famous one, worked with Piaget, was director of Piaget Institute in Geneva and so on. And I had a lot of philosophical discussion with him very early on about the nature of reality. And I ended up through my educational system to becoming a mountain guide and ski coach and so on, and being in nature every day. And for me, there was such evidence of incredible organization in nature and relationships, and that didn't match the scientific academic knowledge that tells us that the universe is random, that this all happened by chance, and so on. And so for me, it was like, how is this possible? What is this organization? How does it work? There must be some fundamental principle that are missing in our physics. And so it became a passion for me to try to understand this. And eventually it took over my sport life, and I give up my ski coaching career and became a scientist. I worked night and day to catch up for almost 5 years independently, studied advanced physics, mathematics, and I found something profound. And I found it because I was not inside the institution. So I was able to have my own thoughts, think my own vision of the universe, and develop a way of going about it that was different than the institutionalized educational system.
It's a funny thing in the world is that we put so much credence on, like, what's your academic qualifications, what's university. But I don't know if you've heard of this guy named Einstein. He was a patent clerk, had nothing to do with science. He just was very, very deep thinker, right? Maxwell, Curie, there's dozens of the most important people who've solved the biggest challenges actually had nothing to do with mainstream science. So
most of the largest changes that happen and evolution that happen in physics happen from people that were autodidact and that developed their own ideas outside the box of what was present at the time. Because if we want to advance, we can't be just continuing to do the same thing. We have to come up with something completely different. And what I found is has a deep meaning, even philosophically, even in our understanding of the nature of consciousness and the nature of our existence. So it's profound, and it's starting to be understood in the academic structure.
Let's get into that. Into that. So you did step into the structures. How many papers have you written? How many physics papers have you written?
Over 20 different physics papers. Some of them were critical, fundamental papers. One in 2012 that made very, very precise predictions that were confirmed.
Yeah, so you've definitely had an impact on the whole field of physics. But have you really solved what Einstein couldn't solve, and a unified field theory?
Yes, I have.
How did you do that?
If
Question on everyone's lips, right?
If Einstein had the tools that we have today,
right,
he would have solved it,
right,
for sure. I think he was missing a few pieces that were not present at this time that would have made it obvious to him. And actually, he, in some ways, did solve it. He just didn't know he did. And it has to do with the nature of black holes and the structure of event horizon in the universe. And I want to make clear as well that what I've solved is actually just the relationship of what was already there. I didn't invent new particles. I didn't invent new fields. I didn't have to come up with no eccentric, crazy things. I just saw the pattern was there. All the information was there. It just was in the wrong order, and it was in the wrong order just because it had been found at different historic time and was never put back together in the proper way.
So you put it together in the right way.
Yeah.
So I'll give you this sort of scaffolding, right? So Nassim has basically solved the kind of the challenges between quantum mechanics, general relativity, the weak and strong nuclear forces, and basically the disconnects are in physics with a theory that unifies all of physics and much of our sciences. And one of the results of that is an incredibly powerful way of generating electricity, completely differently to how we do now. So currently, every bit of electricity in the world is a function of turning a magnet inside coils. And there's just different ways of turning that magnet, right? From started with steam to water to all sorts of things. But it's all turning magnets inside coils based on electromagnetic
nuclear fission, which is used to boil water and
which is used to turn a magnet inside a coil. But ultimately, it's all a magnet inside a coil, just in different ways, right? So he's developed a completely different way of generating electricity that requires way less energy input, way more energy output, no dangers, no moving parts, and incredibly cheap to have, like, ridiculous abundant energy.
No,
that's what we're here to talk about.
No energy input.
No energy input. Thank you.
Input.
That sounds crazy, but 200 years ago, if you'd said, hey, you won't need to, like, wash your clothes or talk to people even, because we're going to turn some stuff inside some other stuff, people would be like, are you crazy? And, that's what leaders are. They see things other people can't see, and all that. So
to be precise, it's not that there is no energy input from the nature of the universe. The energy is there. It's in the structure of space-time. It's in the structure of space-time at the quantum level. It's the energy that runs the atom, that makes the atom possible. In fact, the atom, the particles that we call the atom, is a function of that field, that fundamental field in self-coherence.
Let's get into that. So I just want to give you some context, right? So we're going to spend. Let's give you.
I'm not allowed to talk about.
He's definitely allowed to talk about everything, but I also want to make sure we get sort of the heart of this. Let's talk about the science, but let's talk about the science at the core of the unified field theory, and then we can talk about the actual like technology that's possible. We'll kind of separate those two things. So, you know, I'll stop interrupting you for a whole 10 minutes.
No, that's fine. Yeah, I understand.
Talk to us about what is the unified
Otherwise
theory.
I'll go on forever.
Give us the cliff notes on understanding kind of the unified field theory itself.
Okay, well, the cliff notes is that what we've discovered eventually as being particles, this structure that we see everywhere in space, is actually a function of the space itself. Space at the quantum scale is not empty. This was the foundation of quantum mechanics. Quantum mechanics was discovered by Max Planck, and he was trying to solve simple equations that had to do with what's called black body radiation, the emission, the thermal emission that comes off a body when it's heated. And so it's a simple relationship between the temperature of a system and the emission that it radiates, right? The frequency of the emission that it radiates. And the equations was exact. It gave the correct values for what we were measuring in the laboratory from the filament of a light bulb. Actually, he was hired to make a better light bulb, and that's how he stumbled on this. And to make the equation work, he had to add this constant, that's h bar, that quantized, that says the energy that comes off the body is coming off in like little packets, quantities, which Einstein eventually called the photon and got the Nobel Prize for. But this equation had another part. That part was ignored. That part actually was censored because this was the beginning of the First World War and then the Second World War and so on. This part of the equation was really weird. It said that when the temperature goes to 0 Kelvin, at 0 Kelvin, where everything, I mean, zero, it's cold here, but 0 Kelvin is like serious, like it's not even Alaska, right? It's super cold, right? So everything should be frozen. There should be no thermal agitation. The equation said, actually at 0 Kelvin, there's an infinite amount of energy. And so just so we're clear, I'm trying to make this short, but just so we're clear, these equations are describing a little oscillator. Like think of a little particle that's oscillating, right? And at different temperature, it's emitting different electromagnetic radiation frequencies. Well, it said that at 0 Kelvin, it's emitting infinite amount of energy, all right? And that was removed because it was like, oh, what do we do with that? The equation works for everything else, but we have an infinite amount of energy. The equation diverges. What do we do? We just got to get rid of this. And this started this whole thing called renormalization, a way to use different things to like cut off the 0 point energy, to remove it. And it was successful mathematically, but it's mathematically inconsistent because you know what you end up with? You end up with a little oscillator that doesn't have a source of energy. So it's oscillating miraculously. And that's how quantum mechanics become, esoteric instead of being clear, mechanical, and understandable. And that's when students dislocate their brain, right? Because all of a sudden they have and it gives the right answer because you can write the equations for the oscillator, right? But mechanically, if you actually look at it for real, this oscillator has no source of energy. So it should dampen within billionth of a second and stop because things need energy to continue oscillating. And so it took all these, this is 100 and some years ago, it took all this time. Zero point energy became, something of science fiction. If you talked about it in physics conference, everybody would say you're crazy, you can ignore it, it doesn't matter, don't worry about it. Calculate, shut up and calculate was Feynman's, description. And so it was clear to me that you couldn't just remove that energy. And when you put it back in, what do you find? I'm finishing. What do you find? You find that the particle, so let's say it's the nuclei of the atom that has all the mass of the atom in it, all the energy of the atom. When you calculate that energy for that particle, you find that that particle acts exactly like a black hole, but not approximately, exactly. That is, you find the equations of Einstein for black holes. So now you have cosmology at the quantum level. Now you start to see the unification. You start to find the atomic structure. The proton has never been seen to decay. Physicists will all tell you, perpetual motion is not possible, right? Except we live in perpetual motion. No proton has ever been seen to decay. They continue oscillating since we can see, as far as we can see, 13.7 billion years. Not one proton, even when we collide them in an accelerator at near the speed of light, they recohere right after we collide them. They're incredibly stable. Right? And that's because they have a source of energy that's continuing to feed them. And when you realize that, now you can engineer a device. You can write the equation. Took me 35 years, okay? And you can see an engineering path to do like the atom. Extract the energy from that source of energy, from the 0 point. That we're baiting into, that all the material you see around us is a coherence of that field. And so you can make devices that oscillate just the right way, that spin the electromagnetic field just the right way, and boom, you create a little gradient. This energy has been shown to exist, right? It's not an hallucination, as Nassim Haramein
For like 100 years, right? They've seen zero point energy for like 100 years.
There's this thing called the Casimir effect where you get two plates really close together. You can eliminate the long wavelength of the 0 point energy so that you have a little gradient and it pushes the plate together. So we already know you can have energy out of this field. But two plates gradient is a really bad way of doing a gradient. Right? When we look at the world, where we see the most powerful gradient, where do we see them? Hurricane, tornadoes, right? The gradient between the center of a hurricane and the edge of an hurricane is huge, the density difference. And that's what produces angular momentum. And so you can create the correct electromagnetic circumstances to create a gradient and extract energy. And now you have a device that's extracting energy and that doesn't need any energy in, so it feeds back on itself and it just keeps on going. And more you pull energy, more it gives you energy. Because the density of 0 point energy, this is from Max Planck, is 10 to the 93 grams per centimeter cube. Just to give you an idea, the universe mass is 10 to the 55 grams. So you're like 39 orders of magnitude more energy in a centimeter cube of space, quantum space, than the whole universe. If I took all the stars, all the galaxies, all the stuff I stuck into a centimeter cube, it would be less dense than 0 point energy. This is the amount of energy that's available, you guys. And you can produce it anywhere you are in the universe, at any point. It's the ultimate decentralized power, right? So every device can have its own little 0 point energy production device.
Let's get into that. So a black hole at the heart of every atom. is a heck of a statement. If I was allowed to swear, I would say that's fractal as fuck, but I'm not allowed to swear, so I won't say that. Like the cosmology all the way down to the atom level, right? But then the other thing that blew me away
It relates to a lot of what the indigenous people have been saying around the world for a very long time.
The other thing is getting smaller, getting all the way down to the Planck level, which is how much smaller than the current understanding?
Okay, so you're made out of approximately 100 trillion cells, maybe a little less since last night, but each cell is made of about 100 trillion atoms. So atoms are small, and in the atom, there's a nuclei that's called a proton, and the nuclei of the atom is very small relative to the electron cloud. So, the atom is actually 99.999999% space. So the material you see is mostly space, and this 0 point energy that makes the field that we call the atom. And then, the proton is very small. So imagine so this field, this 0 point field, is made of particles as well. These particles are Planck scale size, right? So I call it a Planck plasma. And so if I grew a Planck scale particle so that it was the size of a grain of sand, okay, the proton would be approximately a radius from here to Alpha Centauri, so about 40 trillion kilometers, right? So that's different in scale. That's why it's now so obvious to go and tap into that.
Master of understatement. So much smaller. Two facts that I think that really blew me away. One is the sort of amount of energy in 0 point energy that roughly the size of a cup of coffee would boil all the water in all the oceans, but on all the planets, not just this one. It's hard to understand. And then another fact that recently was shared, I think, is a mind bender, is that for every grain of sand on the Earth, there's probably 1 billion planets in the known universe. So just put all that together, and you see how much energy there is. So
we live in an incredibly energetic universe, and the universe is clearly running on a source of energy that we haven't discovered. We've discovered it partially by using nuclear fission to release the energy of the nuclei. So with a very small amount of matter, we can get a lot of energy. But that's the brute way to go about it. You can actually tickle the energy out.
Yeah.
And not have to do any fusion, all the fusion devices that cost billions of dollars to build, right? That haven't succeeded in removing 1 watt of usable energy. All these years, trillions of dollars and resources have been dedicated to nuclear fusion because it's been sold as the power of the future. Okay, well, for about 50 years, 60 years, they've been building it.
Nothing.
And they can't extract energy from it because that is the brute approach. And it's not necessary. You can do it.
Let me put it in context, right? So this is potentially the third biggest breakthrough in science in the last few hundred years. The first one was electromagnetism, which gave us literally electricity and lights and power and washing machines and everything else, right? Huge breakthrough. Life before and after that was just unrecognizable, really. Total transformation. You could call it disruption, really total transformation, really for the betterment of humankind across longevity, health, nutrition, everything, right? The next big one was actually quantum mechanics, which has given us lasers and GPS and phones and, incredible healthcare and all sorts of things, right? And that came from quantum. This is probably bigger than both of those. That it's a scientific concept. There are many, many breakthroughs, just like quantum mechanics. You couldn't predict, suddenly we're going to have GPS and know where we are, right? In a similar way, this has huge implications across all of society. And one of the reasons that Nassim and Sarah moved to Switzerland was safety purposes amongst others, and to protect the intellectual property. So this is a huge thing. You can see why I wanted to help them, right? This is the kind of thing you invest in, and your grandchildren are proud of you. If this works, this is a really, really, really important transition in science.
It's a train that's leaving. There's many laboratories around the world that are doing this in a very quiet way, behind the scene. It's becoming more known because there's whistleblowers that are coming out. I don't know if you heard some of the latest podcasts with people from DARPA and DOD and DOE that are coming out that are saying, oh, yeah, we've been working on zero-point energy in the background for a long time and all this, and this will change. And it's really important for all you guys to know this because, like, you're here in Davos saying we want to do something that's impactful and we want to find solution. Like at the basis of all the solution is energy production. It's critical for anything, including AI, which is going to require massive amount of energy production. And
we need a huge
cannot
breakthrough.
be done by conventional means.
We need a huge breakthrough. I sat through 2 hours of the smartest person in the world about climate energy, walking me through all the science and all the data about the energy crisis, like someone who really, really knows, Nate Hagens. And basically, we're completely screwed without also a technical term, without a total breakthrough in energy transition. The only way forward is going to be to have everyone accept doing a lot less. How well do you think that's going to go? It's like, so we need a complete breakthrough in our understanding of energy. Let's talk about the device. Let's change gears a little bit. So I went to your lab. I wanted to know for myself. I saw the device. You've created a proof of concept device. We debated whether to say that or not because it creates some risks. But I've seen a proof of concept of a device of something that literally just produces energy and keeps producing energy, and there's no obvious inputs and all of this. We're going back there on Monday. If there's the right people that want to join us, that's possible. It's some hours drive from here. I saw the device. It's something that we can build into an actual commercial product in a few years, and with the right funding fairly quickly. How many patents do you have? Can you give us a sense of sort of
we have
the
about
protection?
50 patents. They're not all on energy because there's application to many other things than energy as well, because you're actually tapping into the fundamental energy at the source of creation. So it is like very interesting application to health and gravity control and so on. And so, but we have pretty good portfolio of patents. There's many, many more that have to be filed. What is the issue with this? Because, people like Tesla was working on this, many others worked on this throughout the years. The issue is that the scientific evolution is there, the know-how is there, but the financial structure has never been there to support this because it's been in independent labs and not funded by the governmental agencies, either than in black budgets. And so it's been like, no fuel in the tank makes it very, very difficult to move forward with duct tape and barbed wire, right? And so it's really kind of like, this is the most important thing I can think, and I'm not just saying this for my lab, I'm just saying, like, if you want to go and fund another lab, go and fund another lab, but this is the most important thing that needs to be funded on this planet right now, because without this, all the rest doesn't happen.
Yeah, so we'll take questions in a bit. I want to get through kind of the key pieces, and then we'll have an opportunity for questions shortly. So here's the cliff note. There's a proof of concept of being able to generate energy, roughly a box this size, that will produce all the power for a house, pretty much indefinitely, no moving parts. And something bigger, like the size of a car for a large factory. You still want to have power plants producing this. You still want to have electrical grids. You still want to have all sorts of things. You still probably want to have energy companies who build and make and distribute and manage this process. The commercial plan is not to like be another Tesla and try to build factories and do all that. It's actually to work with the system. So the plan is to license the technology to major energy producers and major utilities, so that this can go quickly and move fast, and people see this as an opportunity. That's the commercial plan.
Yeah, and we are a research lab, and it's been a little difficult. You can imagine, a little frustrating over 35 years, because often when we approach funders, the answer is, well, give me the device, and I'll give you the funds. And I say, give me the funds, I'll finish the research and get you the device, right? It's getting people to do this for, and have the vision, because it's really difficult for the funder to have the vision, because they can take my papers and turn around and give it to the mainstream and say, is this valid? And what do you think the mainstream is going to tell them? Absolutely not. They have billions of dollars invested in accelerators. Okay, CERN is burning 1.5 billion a year. Okay, it costs 13 billion. They want a new one now, right? Tokamaks, hot fusion, all these things. And so, of course, it's like we need funders that are altruistic, that are doing this for the right reason, and that are willing to fund the research. Because even if I remove the technology from and I scrapped it from the results, the value of unifying physics and understanding the nature of our existence and the universe, that value alone is worth trillions, because it will change the world forever. It is changing. And this is why I have millions and millions of people following me. But as well, like, this is why there was like 64,000 downloads of my latest paper, right? 64,000 downloads of a 50-page paper full of equations. This is not the kind of thing you download before bed, to have like some light reading. So, it's like...
All right, let's get into the nuts and bolts. Let's get into the nuts and bolts of what we're doing here, right? So we're going to raise some money. I've been talking with Sarah and Nassim. I understand business, raising money, and have a team of 200 people, and know about the world of business a lot. We're going to raise 50 million in the next year. The first tranche is 20 million. We are setting up a U.S. entity that will own the perpetual rights to commercializing this in the North American market. So it'll be real equity in a real company that is an operating company. Nassim and his company will have a controlling interest in that, so he can't be kicked out of that. But we are basically selling equity to minority investors in the entity that will own the perpetual U.S. rights to everything that comes out of the lab. That's what we're doing. The Series A, we're raising 20 million between now and June. There's a major investor meeting in May in New York City. We just confirmed Deepak to join us for that. And we're hoping to close Series A, which will be 20 million. And Series A will be valued, the business will be valued at an extremely attractive 50 million for that first round. The second round, we're hoping to once we get that first 20 million, then for the next 30 million will be valued at 100 million. So that's the plan. Plans are a good way of making God laugh sometimes. So we'll see how it falls out, but that's the intention. The company, it'll be for professional investors. This is a U.S. company. You'll have to be an accredited investor. There's a specific set of criteria for that, about income and assets and all that. We can't get around that. It'll be a public-private placement under Regulation D, Rule 5063C. Sorry, we can talk about the details of that in the 2-hour investor meeting later on. There'll be a minimum of 50,000 investment, but we're happy to take 50,000 investments from people who want to do that. It'd be wonderful if some larger investors came in and did big tranches, so we could get this moving. There's also a way to invest if you have a foundation.
The timing is really critical.
Yeah, we want to get the 20 underway between now and like March,
April.
April.
Right now, I have my hands tied behind my back. I have a crew of about 20 people, some of the most brilliant physicists in Europe.
We want to go faster. We just want to go faster. So if you have an NGO or a foundation, there is a 501c3 you can invest in as well if you want to do the money in a charitable way, in a tax-deductible way. We can talk about that another time. But what we're looking for is expressions of interest. I will send out a link through the group that you're all part of. If you're not part of that, make sure you get into that. The group that through the app, the Lumi or whatever it's called. So you'll get a message that will have a form that you can fill in. So we're looking for the right investors. So we're looking to close this quickly, but we're also going to be selecting investors. There's a huge amount of interest from North American investors, obviously, and we're starting the roadshow just after this. So we'll be looking for like your connections, your capabilities, your network, and how you can add to the enterprise. Not just do you have some funds. So you'll see a link to apply. So the steps will be after this. If you're interested, you'll apply. You'll then be invited, if you're accepted, to a 2-hour investor meeting. We'll be able to do right into the science, right into the investment. You'll sign an NDA to be part of that, and that'll be the next step.
And you're invited if you have physicist friends, people you know in the scientific community, whatever, to like invite them onto the technical, Zoom meeting we do, whatever, so that we can, show the physics, show the science. We have absolutely no problem discussing the physics with anybody, anywhere, at any time.
Yeah, so that's going to happen. I think that's all the technicals. The amazing thing is we have 20 minutes for questions. Who'd like to go first? We've got some time for questions. We've got one in the back corner. And then we're going to use microphones because this is being recorded. We'll grab one of the mics. Thank you. We'll move it around.
One.
So questions can be about the science, the investment, anything that you like. Yeah.
Thank you so very much. It's Fiona Bannister under my hat of decarbonize.org, or my second hat as a multifamily office through a collaborative group that we are working on the hardest, most difficult things. And for my third hat is that with the feather of the indigenous people in the communities that are having their lands extracted from their minerals, their sources. So you hold a gift to all three of us. So the three hats of wisdom.
Thank you.
So in there, my question comes in blended finance. So when you were just discussing integrative sides of financing, so we can have an opportunity, not only if it's a North American company, to enlighten other shareholders into that portfolio, and doing that through whether it's your nonprofit or one of mine that's involved with the United Nations side, partnershipsforchange.org, where you have multiple stakeholders. So I'm just suggesting, because having patents in just America may cause you also some liabilities, and you have the opportunity with your quantum physics, energetic possibility to share this value with the planet. I'm so happy that we could do it together.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think it's critical that all the people involved realize that this is a humanitarian project. And of course, it can create massive ROIs. However, the fundamental attitude and energy that we're looking for in terms of the way we patent things, in terms of the way we release things and so on, is to give this information to humanity. It's not like one company is going to be able to make all the devices for 8 billion people and so on. It's really a universal humanitarian knowledge that needs to be given to humanity. And so it has huge financial possibilities at the same time as it has a deep fundamental impact on humanity. So that's why, in a foundation structure and in a for-profit structure, relationship is what we see happening.
Yeah, and they've been trying to raise some money for some years in a number of different ways, and it's just been really slow. And I've come along and said, look, let's make something really attractive that we can get this done quickly, give people a ridiculous upside. Of course, there's also a big downside. Don't put your life savings into this. As a professional investor, this could go nowhere, right? It could be, all sorts of things could happen. Now, we were talking with Nassim on the way here. God forbid something happened to him. His team actually can continue. So it's not, dependent on him personally. And it would be, shared if anything happened there. But it is a high-risk investment. We're several years away from commercializing, right? But it's a science that has 100 years of history. And if anyone's going to do it, it's probably going to be Nassim. So it is, it's a very high-risk investment, but it's also an extremely high-return investment. The U.S. entities we're doing it this way to, get this moving. There'll be entities in other parts of the world as we kind of get that going. But those valuations, if we actually start, will be insanely different. There'll be some opportunity for the early investors to, participate in that. Other questions? We've got one over here. Russell.
Well, first of all, thank you, Nassim, David, and Sarah, for putting this together. Very nice conversation, obviously very thought-provoking for all of us, and enjoyed meeting you over the last couple of days. I have two questions. Number one, the intellectual property rights, is that going to be at the U.S. level or the holding level? And my second question is, in terms of money, and you said it's going to take a few years. Is it the bottleneck? It just takes a couple of years to develop it still, or MVP, despite let's say an infinite
With 50
amount of
million, we're going
capital?
as quick as humanly possible to about 3 years to be
So
out
maybe
there
you could
commercially.
explain that 3 years.
And
a
then
little bit
the
in
IP
detail.
will stay with the Swiss holding company.
There's a vast difference between a proof of concept in a laboratory and a production-ready prototype. So that development needs to be done. It needs to be done appropriately, and it needs to be done with the right, equipment and so on. And that just takes time to put together. It's just the way of science. And so, yeah, I think that 2 to 3 years is a very fast development rate from proof of principle to production-ready devices. And relative, from physics laboratories, relative to physics laboratories, I think it's like massively affordable. It's very, very cheap when you're considering you're buying into unified field theory that is producing the technology of the future. And so, I think that altogether, considering that if you were to invest in a tokamak, we would be talking about billions and billions and trillions. I think it's a reasonable timeline to think of, like 2 to 3 years. Could be much faster.
Yeah, we could get lucky and find it done in 18 months, and we could get unlucky and find it takes 5 years. It's hard to know till we really get in. But the proof of concept is there. It's doable. And we'll try and speed it up. But 50 million is what's needed for like the timeline to get to that point. It's not an incredibly expensive process. It's time intensive, and it doesn't require huge technology. It requires a very intelligent team working very rapidly and hiring exactly the right engineers and product people, not just the scientists, and pulling that team together.
And highly focused, which is really difficult to do right now when I'm like spending so much time trying to raise funds and doing conferences and selling gizmos so that I can continue funding the lab and so on. So
yeah, let's get all that out of the way so you can do some science.
Right.
He's pretty good at science, I hear. What questions? What other questions do we have? We want to dig into the science. Do you want to know why there's a black hole at the heart of every atom? I don't understand that. Question with the microphone right here.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the all sharing the information. Just to confirm, 3 years and 7 years, you said, for the commercialization.
3 years for a proof of concept commercial. I'm saying it could take longer, but the current estimates is about 3 years.
3 years to a production
ready prototype.
Okay,
yeah.
okay.
So a company like a big energy company or utility could license it and go into manufacturing and have it ready and build it and scale it and distribute to everyone.
Or car company, and so on. Yeah.
Okay, so it can be any company which is the whole world basically, who wants to have a very
has a need for energy.
Innovative energy flow.
From making your watch tick to your cell phone to your laptop to your car, your house, and so on. And so it completely decentralized power.
Okay.
And so it's in every industry.
Yeah. So because I have a health investor, invest in innovative projects. I think it cannot get better than that for innovation.
Yes.
So your documents is that going to show how in the health industry transformation can happen?
Okay, so in the health industry, there is a very important application that has to do with longevity. And extension of life, because our cells work under the same principle. So we mathematically discovered that, and I was just invited to present at Roger Penrose and Stuart Hameroff conference on consciousness in Barcelona in July this year. A paper on this source of energy, because it actually shows that your body actually function under that same energy. The mitochondria is what produce energy in your body. It makes ATP. Just sitting here all day, you make about your body weight in ATP. If you run a marathon, you'll make a ton of ATP that day. And the ATP is produced by little motors that are spinning at 60,000 RPM inside the mitochondria and ripping protons and electrons apart and recombining them into the ATP molecule. And when motors eventually break and there's less and less energy, then the cells start to make copies that are failing. And this is actually getting old.
Yes.
Right. And when I speak about extension of life, people think, oh man, what is, I just want to say we already do that, right? So like only 100 years ago, the life expectancy was like 35 to 40 years. Now it's about 80 years. So we've already extended life quite a bit by improving the circumstances of the biology so we don't break down as fast. Well, when you understand these principles at the deeper level, now all of a sudden you can create technology that keeps these motors staying highly coherent. And that could lead to very, very fundamental approach, a new approach to health care and life extension and so on.
Yeah, perfect. So I wait for the documents then to share.
Yeah, there are quite big implications beyond
yeah,
energy, but
yeah,
energy
yeah.
is the most urgent and important application right now. This is the most important thing to solve because we're destroying the planet with fossil fuels at a ridiculous, unsustainable rate, and while energy needs are going up, this is going to get worse. So. All the great green stuff is great, but it's not addressing the core problem. So energy has to be fixed.
Yeah,
then we can do a lot more.
It's kind of surprising all the push that there has been on electric vehicles because you got to charge that thing, right? And so you got to take the power from somewhere else. So now you just displace how you're producing power to some central, power
Elon
source.
Musk.
And so if everybody bought a Tesla today, the energy structure that we have in the world would not be able to sustain it. There's no way we could power all the cars. If they were electric today, it would be a complete breakdown of our electrical grid. So it's not a solution. The solution is that we have to produce power in the vehicle as we go. And now you have a vehicle that has infinite range. So think of this. Imagine a boat that has infinite range, right? So you can actually leave the coast here and go to Africa, and not have to worry about fueling along the way, right? So these are all things that are very possible.
Yeah, the implications are unimaginable.
Disruption, complete disruption.
It's the stuff of science fiction in some ways. Yeah. Other questions? Yeah. We have a question over here. And then here, yeah.
Yes, hello. I do physics Olympiads, and it's really interesting for me to listen to this topic. And my question is that if your theory stands correct, then why hasn't it been peer-reviewed by other scientists and not confirmed experimentally in the mainstream physics?
Can I give the quick answer? The core papers haven't been published yet. They're coming out, and they're going to come out in parallel with the book, and so that it all kind of happens at once. Yeah.
One of the core paper was published a year ago. It's in print on the CERN server, and that's the one that's been downloaded 64,000 times. No physicist, actually an expert in quantum electrodynamics, actually had the nerve to talk and said, I can't see any mathematical error, and this is very interesting. But it's in peer review right now, so it will be published in peer review journals. My papers prior to that, contrary to what the trolls on the internet have been saying, are peer reviewed. They are published in peer review journals, and I've been publishing, and there is no fundamental mathematical errors in them. It takes time to change a whole field of physics into a new direction. And there's been a lot of pushback. There's been agencies on this planet for, in some cases, good reason, that have been censoring zero-point energy research for a very long time. And some of these people that came after me were paid by these agencies to do
Okay,
so.
so you hope that in a couple of years it will be like in mainstream physics also recognized, right?
It should be. It's starting to be. Many professors are starting to teach my physics in their classrooms. So it should be. It should get there in the next few years. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Especially when the technology comes up.
Yeah, exactly. When it starts to occur in people's homes. The guy who said that the universe doesn't revolve around the Earth was not very popular for quite some years. There was another question here, here and then down the back. Yeah.
Well, thank you, Dr. Nassim, and very inspiring. Okay, and
Thank you.
I hope you are right, and we have, this source of energy as a solution for the future. And building on what our colleague was saying,
Yeah.
well, it's going to be very exciting. That in a few months, there's going to be this paper that is under review. Okay.
Right.
So looking forward to see that, and that your predictions can be confirmed by independent observations.
Of course,
And I have two questions for you.
Mm-hmm.
One, you were mentioning Dr. Roger Penrose, that probably is one of the most prominent physicists alive today.
Mm-hmm.
He received the Nobel Prize a few years ago.
Mm-hmm.
My number one question is, did you have a chance to discuss about all this with Dr. Penrose, and what Dr. Penrose thinks about all this? And my second question is that both of you wear a pendant here. That is the same pendant, and can you explain a little bit the meaning of this pendant?
Okay. So I haven't been able to directly discuss this with Dr. Penrose. I'm looking forward to it. Most likely this summer I will be able to, because I was invited to, do a conference on consciousness in their consciousness study conference in Barcelona. And but I've discussed it with many other professors. It's scary for physicists out there to endorse my work. They get a lot of pushback if they do. In some cases, pretty dramatic pushback. So it's slowly getting there, and more physicists are getting the spine to, speak up. We're behind the doors, though. We're talking to a lot of physicists, and most of the reactions at first is a lot of skepticism, and then as we go through the equations, in many cases, it's tears that comes up in people's eyes. And that's really exciting to see.
Yeah, it's not what if he's wrong. The question's really what if he's right. Right? What if he's wrong, so what? It's a blip. What if he's right? Right?
This changed the world.
Yeah.
So and on the topic of the little crystal things that I manufacture, these are part of a device, an energy device. Okay, so there's multiple different energy devices. These produce continuous power. These are over unity devices. They produce continuous power. I have video. If I had my laptop, I could show you that it's microamps. So it's microwatts. It's very small, but it's continuous. Since 1999, I've been making them. And the field that they produce, right, they create this little coherency in the 0-point field, has an impact on the water molecule. So I thought, okay, this is a way that I can help finance the lab. So I put that on the market for people to increase the energy levels of the water that they drink, and the water in their blood, and so on. And so we put those on the market to help finance the lab.
And if you don't believe that crystals produce energy, you haven't noticed you're in Switzerland, and watches use crystals to power them. We're in the land of crystals, like powering watches.
Yeah, they're oscillators, and it's a really good way to create a resonance match to the 0 point, is to use a good oscillator.
All right, we've got time for one more quick question, and then we've got to move. We've got one at the front here. And we'll be able to talk at the back first. Yeah, we'll be able to talk for 10 minutes afterwards outside, and then we have to go to another session. It's up the mountain at the, whatever it's called. You take the furuncular. It's at future.io. It shuts up. It's called future.io, and I've heard you're all able to come up there So that starts at 3 o'clock. We'll be able to continue the conversation.
We'll have some more fun.
So 3 to 5. Yeah, questions down the back.
Yes, thank you so much. Quick question.
Yes.
I'm quite interested in the overlap of the spirituality and the science part. And we know there are so many energy centers in this globe, like the pyramids, everything. And how do you, from your perspective, how do you view the channeling power thing? And how do you think about the non-locality proposed by Jung, by Carl Gustav Jung?
Oh, yes. Well, this is a deep question. It has to do, so when you write this theory and you realize that there's a field and this field is interacting, producing the atomic energy, then you, in mathematics and in physics, you have such a thing called Shannon's law, where you can there's an equivalence between energy and information. So you can actually think of this field as a field of information. That's why, I love Deepak Chopra's work, and because it starts to show that actually it's an exchange of information that's creating this reality, and that the reason it organizes because there's a high interacting relationship between all points in the system, and it starts to sound really esoteric because you make these calculation, and for instance you make the calculation for the proton and in terms of information, and you realize that inside the proton, in the volume of the proton at the Planck scale, there is exactly all the information of the energy of the universe in one proton. And now you got a book from the Dalai Lama that says the universe in an atom, and you're like, whoa, these guys knew about this, and it's in terms. I'm saying this in a rigorous way. It's not like loosely that way. It's rigorous. It gives the correct mass for the universe, which includes dark matter and dark energy, which is a thing they had to add to the standard model to patch holes in the standard model, because when they calculate the mass of the universe, they're missing 96% of the mass. So they are adding, fudge factors in our equation gives the exact correct value. That means that all protons, in terms of information, are related to all other protons in the universe. And I know that's hard to fathom. However, this is how the system can self-organize. This is the hidden variables from Bohmian mechanics. This is showing that the universe is entangled, that there's non-locality, which received a Nobel Prize, a few years ago, and so on. That it's a network of information that eventually produce enough coherency that consciousness can emerge from it, which is information gathering and expressing itself, right? And so there's such deep spiritual and philosophical bases that emerge from rigorous mathematical solutions to the nature of reality. And so I don't know if I'm answering your question, but it starts to make, and it can have a super important impact individually. I'm just talking as an individual. Forget all the rest of the stuff, but just as an individual, to know that maybe the path to a higher awareness and spiritual awareness is actually through the atomic structure, not in some rainbow field somewhere with unicorns, but actually inside the atomic structure is the nature of awareness, of consciousness, and your relationship to the rest of the universe.
Oh, yeah.
I just want to make a couple more points about this device. So this device, I live and breathe this with the staff at the laboratory. So I know a lot of you are hearing it for the first time and it might sound so unbelievable. So I just want to make a couple more points about the technology itself. This technology does not use rare earth minerals. This is so gentle on the planet. The device is small, it's inexpensive to build, and it works. I'm always around the proof of prototype that we're talking about, so it's become a normal thing for me. And as I'm attending all these conferences on how to solve the issues around the planet, I keep thinking, oh, that could be solved, that could be solved, that can be solved with this device, because the scarcity we're experiencing today is artificial. We live in an abundant universe. As Nassim said, we are living in a perpetual motion universe. Everything spins. How do you think it keeps spinning? The ZPE we're talking about. The energy is there. It is just a few years away. When we talk like this, people think, oh, this is generations. No, this is a handful of years. This is the next couple of years. We are going to be living in an abundant planet. And think about what that means. We're talking about more than just saving on your power bill with an inexpensive energy device. We're talking about solving issues around poverty. Now we can extract water, desalination, water from the atmosphere, food, movement of resources around this planet. So now we're having equal access to all kinds of resources to help everybody on this planet. This solves so many issues we're here talking about today. So it's not because I'm biased that I'm saying this is the most important thing we can be talking about here. So thank you so much for all of you joining this talk and waking up to what we are able to accomplish together, because we are a small team in our laboratory. So thank you so much for Dr. David Roth for joining us here.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Remarkable individual.
We need the help, and we need the help from all of you. Help not just with financing, but if you know young physicists that want to come work for any physicists, I shouldn't say young, people that are visionaries that can come join us, please reach out. I have a lot of cards on me. I know we don't have a lot of time to answer questions after this, but please come. Maybe you can at least exchange cards so we can continue with the Zoom. So thank you so much for your participation in helping us, because together we can launch this. This is for humanity, by humanity. It's not just our team. We have to do this together. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Like I said, the biggest breakthrough in energy since the discovery of electricity, and I didn't put a question mark at the end there. It's a period, or as we call it in Australia, a full stop. Let's make this a full stop of the energy problems in the world. It can be done. The energy is everywhere. We just have to transition it. Quick word, we'll be 5 minutes outside. We're going up the mountain. There's a future.io on the right-hand side of Struttalp. You're welcome to join us for the trip up in 10 minutes. You'll get a note, you'll get an email, right, with a link, with a follow-up, an application to be an investor, which will require some information, A, to prove that you're a professional investor, and B, to understand your network so we can see if it's a good fit and what you would add. And then we'll be having a 2-hour session to go even deeper into the science and the technology and all of that. We're looking to move on this pretty quickly to close this the Series A of 20 million as quick as possible. We're hoping for a Series B by the middle of the year for an increased value. So we're looking for 20 million between now and ideally April, May as the first step. So that's the session. I just want to say thank you to Nassim and Sarah for trusting me that you should come to Davos and that people would show up and that people were interested and that we could do something with this. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Appreciate